Thanks so much for joining us, Amanda. I'm so excited to have you on here.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for having me.
And for those who don't know, I'll let you introduce yourself, but just a brief intro to Amanda. She's the head of marketing at the SEO and content agency Growth Machine. Previously set up B2B marketing at Fitbit and was a journalist. And she's just really amazing at repurposing content, her podcast and Twitter, and she really makes the most of squeezing the most out of every bit of content. So I'm really excited for her to be sharing her learnings with us today. But I'll pound over to you, let you introduce yourself and do your presentation. And if anyone has any questions as we go, you can either pop it in the chat or you can jump into the video chat afterwards as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina. Yeah, I mean, that is the high level. I guess I'm a career content marketer who really started her career in journalism. So out of college, I worked at a tech news sites, paidcontent.org and gigaom.com for several years before pivoting into content marketing by way of food. I started at direct-to-consumer snack company NatureBox, where I headed up content marketing and corporate communications. And then I moved over to Fitbit, where the B2B efforts at Fitbit were still very new. So I was the first B2B or second B2B marketing hire focused on content. So what was kind of interesting there for the purposes of today are at Fitbit, when I joined, Fitbit was already a known consumer brand. So for us as the B2B side, we didn't really have any SEO goals first. Our goals first were making sure people understood the B2B offering. So a lot of the content I created was really more education focused. And for half my time there, and I was there for like 5 years, I think, but half my time there, we didn't even have a blog. So all the content we created is really focused on, lead generation, events, and all that good stuff. And that'll, inform the discussion for today. And then, I joined Growth Machine last summer, where, now I head up marketing for us as a brand. So not client facing, but focused on getting new business and really just trying to establish our credibility in the content and SEO space. So I will start our presentation. And cool. So today, we're going to talk about repurposing your content and powering your marketing team. So the way I want to look at this or go through this is sort of at that strategic level and then getting down into the more tactical ways to repurpose. So we'll start out today with, making the business case for content and the marketing case for repurposing. We'll look at some strategic ways for content to fuel the rest of your marketing efforts. And then we'll spend some time on tactical ways to repurpose. And then I just want to hammer home the point, you're not being redundant. You're not being redundant when you're repurposing content. So why repurpose content? I like to talk about content sustainability, super catchy phrasing, right? But I think it's really important. I think, if you think about the business sustainability aspect, like making your content sustainable across your business, I don't think you're going to get any pushback, right? Nobody is going to say, oh, we shouldn't get the most out of our content, right? But I do think it's important to talk about here because I think the way you position it for your executive team will really inform your overall strategy. And it also just helps to communicate that you are thinking about your content as a business owner. So I like to think about this as, are you getting enough value out of your content? Hopefully, you're already paying your freelance writers well for really good quality blog articles or good white papers. So spend that budget wisely. Make sure you're really getting the most out of that. And also, it's also just you own that content, right? When you're hiring someone to write a piece for you, like a 1,500 word blog article, you own that. So you can find multiple uses for it. I'll say it does pain me when I see even some of our own clients, where they have a terrific blog that's really focused on education, brand awareness, but I can see that they're not using it in the rest of their marketing efforts. I just wonder, but you're spending so much money on this really great content. How can you not use it throughout everything else? So maybe it's even just that people don't think about it, but I do want to, talk about some of these use cases here. Marketing sustainability. So this is where we'll get into how content powers the rest of your team. And if it doesn't, it should. And if it can, then what's the point? Is the content you're making really valuable? Is it on brand? So the way that I think about content on a more holistic or sort of brand level are all these questions here. If you can't consistently get more use out of your content, is it on brand to begin with? So, not every single blog post might become something else, right? But if you're not able to get more use out of them, it might be a sign that that content isn't serving in the brand purpose. I also want to get into, is your content telling the brand story? Like, is it explaining more about your brand? Is it providing that awareness? Does your content further your company's mission? So does it build upon what your company exists for, the problems that you need to solve? And then finally, does your content communicate your value? Are you focusing on outcomes or benefits that your users are getting? How does your content drive that? And I do want to talk about this as a first gold standard example, Gong. So Gong.io, they're creating a new category entirely. They call this category revenue intelligence. And so what Gong does is they sell software to sales teams, really sales, marketing, customer success teams, to help them provide insights on the sales conversations they're having. So all of their content on their blog is focused on how their software delivers on that vision and delivers on that value. So, people might not be searching for the term revenue intelligence today, like, or there might not be a ton of searches for that today, but there might be in a few months or maybe next year. And when that becomes more searched, Gong is going to be the one that gets all those keywords. And if you look at their blog now, I mean, you'll see that, well, one, their voice and tone is very on brand. Like, it's just very clear who they're talking to. I, as someone who does not work at Gong, I might describe their voice and tone as sort of bro-y, but it just works for them. I mean, they're speaking very on a very friendly and accessible level to other sales leaders. And their content is very just FOMO based and value driven. Everything on their blog you'll see is about all the value you'll get out of using Gong and how you can use that to drive the rest of your marketing efforts. So this is just an overall really good example of using content to really support your overall brand and vision. And then this very beautiful, flow chart I hand drew. So this is just to kind of represent a lot of my time at Fitbit and how I created content there. And you'll see here, there isn't really a blog shown in this chart because for a long time we didn't have that. For a long time, I really focused on white papers and interactive content. Interactive content was stuff like quizzes or challenge generators. We focused on selling to HR leaders and corporate benefits leaders who are running corporate wellness programs for their employees. So things like step challenges, activity challenges. So I created this interactive piece that was like, you as a user would like click on a couple of options and then it would think, and then it would suggest a challenge idea for you, like a corporate challenge. Anyway, so created white papers, interactive content, and this really powered the rest of the marketing team. The white papers gave way to events. The white papers and interactive content supported the demand generation team because it drove leads. The interactive content supported product marketing and user marketing because we had both prospects and customers of our product who would bookmark this interactive content and just come back to it every quarter, every month, or however often they came back to it. The white papers also gave way to educational content and sort of foundational content that the PR team used for claims in their overall talking points, and that the product marketing team used to help give them more insights into the products that we created. So this is kind of one way to look at it. And now I do want to dig into each, and I'll dig into each sort of subset of marketing and how content can support that function. So in demand generation, right, this is the classic partnership. Content creates, demand generation distributes. And so, the content created here comes in the form of lead magnets, gated assets, content syndication, and lots more. And to create this or to support this and repurpose content, you could turn multiple blog posts into white papers, or even do that backwards, take the white papers and distill them into separate little blog posts. And you could look at repurposing as the short-term goal while the SEO works its magic. So SEO it's a long-term play. It just is, especially when you're a brand new site. And, most people would say, and Growth Machine included, that it takes about 6 months to see SEO results. So it doesn't mean that you need to create content for 6 months before seeing any kind of measurable result. And you guys know this better than anyone else. You can develop those shorter term goals along the way. And one of those goals can be repurposing. And here's an example from Fitbit. Maybe consider the definitive guide. And I feel like it's almost a touchy subject now because I think we as marketers are often like, oh God, definitive guide. Does anyone want that? And it really, I think it just depends on your audience, right? Depends on the industry you're in. But this worked really, really well for our industry. And I think there are a lot of industries where this still works well. So this was our definitive guide to staying active at work. The reason for this was, this was actually something that my team and I tried to stay away from because, we as a B2B team were like, we want to be taken seriously. We don't want people to just think like, Fitbit's so fun. Yeah. We want people to know that like Fitbit can help you reach your health goals, can help support your employees. Like, oh, that's what we do. But at the same time, I mean, this was something that our customers asked for. Like, this is a thing that our customers were like, yeah, but you are Fitbit and you are fun. And like, we want you to give us advice on fun content that can support our employees. So this ended up becoming this guidebook. I think this is like 20 or 30 pages, like a 30-page PDF, where we really took every single thing that my team and I wrote over the past couple of years on like all the blog posts we wrote related to being active at work. So related to being an employee who is a human being, and turned it into this cohesive ebook. And it's also evergreen. I haven't been at Fitbit in like 3 or 4 years, and they're still using this. It's still on their landing page. And it also just kind of goes to show that what's obvious to you might not be obvious to your audience. So it's worth thinking about. Next up, we have PR and corporate communications. I really love when content and PR teams work really well together because they can really play off of each other. I like to see this as content provides the foundational knowledge and the backup messaging for your PR team. Maybe the content team researches the claims, and then PR turns that into the executive talking points, the things that your leadership is going to be saying in the press. And I think this is such a good example of repurposing because you're already doing this. Like, by the nature of running a blog or producing white papers, you're already doing the research, or at least you're editing it, right? You're pulling in like third-party research, talking to experts. Your PR team should benefit from it. And then also, this might apply more so to mature or corporate companies, but it makes it easier for your legal team to review and approve. When you and your team, the marketing team, kind of come together and like get behind messaging together, then you can present it to the legal team for approval as like, hey, we worked on this together. Here's one thing for you to approve versus 3 piecemeal things that are kind of related. I call this out because at Fitbit, they, when I was there, the legal team reviewed every single thing that the marketing team put out, everything, whether it was obviously a press release, but also even if it was ad copy, everything. And I don't have a cute visual for that because press releases are not very cute to see in a presentation. Product marketing. So it's kind of similar to PR. I see content as offering the educational backbone for the product marketing team. So I think you could turn onboarding insights into blog posts. You could create blog posts to promote the help desk articles and create blog posts to generically talk about your products. So, well, we have an example. I think Zendesk does this really, really well. Ultimately, their blog promotes their help center. And I don't think of their blog as like a help center marketing tool, but it kind of is. I mean, this particular blog post, it's kind of new. It's about, forgot the headline, but it's about using live chat versus messaging for customer support. And in this particular blog post, they explain the benefits of switching from live chat to messaging. They detailed the best practices on a generic or holistic level. And then they also have links for how to do it in the Zendesk platform. So it's something that supports anybody, regardless of whether you're a Zendesk user, but it's better if you are a Zendesk user because then you can, use their help articles. And I think this is such a big opportunity because people are searching for this, right? People, if you're using Zendesk or, any SaaS tool, you are searching for like how to do this and this, like how to, connect these integrations in Zapier, how to use Zendesk, all that stuff. And of course, the Help Center article is going to get the SEO because that's the thing people are looking for. But sometimes you can, I don't want to say outrank because it's like you don't want to compete with your own content, but you can also use your blog to also rank for that, right? Like if I am someone who's not using Zendesk and I'm searching for using live chat and messaging, this blog post would still benefit me. And then maybe I would consider buying Zendesk in the future, who knows? So I do want to say like it's a good way to look at how you can promote the content you're already producing. Social media, another kind of classic partnership with social media and content, right? I mean, you as content managers might also be responsible for social media. But one way I like to look at social media is long form content provides the additional context for the social media team's content. So, transforming a blog post into a LinkedIn post, distilling a blog post into Twitter threads, and providing source content for quizzes. Here's an example that I really like. So, Imperfect Foods, this is a grocery delivery service in the US. On Instagram, they do some really, really nice content on this. They do weekly themed food quizzes, and the quizzes are like they show up in like 5 stories. They do them every week. The quizzes educate users in a really fun way where one, you as a user are learning more about food or how food is prepared. You're also engaging with Imperfect Foods, as a brand and potentially as a product if you're buying through them. And so it's a nice way for them to balance educational and self-promotional. And then also kind of a side note, it's a nice way to tap into seasons, holidays. So, right now it's Women's History Month. So Imperfect Foods did a quiz on sort of Women's History Month in food. So it was just fun. It didn't feel too forced, at least not to me. And it's, enjoyable to engage with. Events, editorial driven event strategy, which also feeds content. So again, one of my favorite examples here, because you can cite interview experts for your white papers because you're probably doing that anyway, then invite those experts to speak at your conference or roundtable, and then create even more content derived from that event. Winter is doing a really good job at this right now. So this is Peplaya's new company, and they're doing Winter Games. It's a monthly event. And, I think Winter is they have a pretty lean team, right? And what's interesting to me personally is, Pep he comes from more of an SEO background, and even he doesn't have an SEO focus with his content at the moment. And when I asked him about this, he said it was because SEO is a long-term play, and he was like, I need to see results faster. So what they decided to do was focus on events. So this helps them build credibility within the B2B audience, and it also helps them to grow their network at scale. So when they do these monthly events, they have content marketer or maybe marketers in general, because it depends on the theme. They have them do short presentations. They really elevate these speakers. And then the speakers, when they're promoting their own session, they're also promoting Winter. So it's kind of a win-win for everyone. And then finally, sales enablement. I mean, if all the content you're producing isn't ultimately closing deals, what's the point, right? SEO can still serve as your guiding light for high-level topics, but sales should be the compass that points the content in the right direction. So you can do this with articles that focus on pain points, case studies that explain how you solve those pain points. And the best thing is that when you do this in tandem with a strong SEO strategy, you're going to be driving a lot of organic traffic to your own site, and you'll keep those people on your website by having this really high quality pain point focused content. So to kind of recap this, I have, we should use content for demand generation, support PR and product marketing with great content, promote your help center articles, take a content centric approach to social media, have the content and events teams fuel each other, and create content to drive sales. The next point I want to hit on is repurposing as the means of distribution. I think that, we often think of content as having these 2 parts of creation and distribution, but I really think there's this gray area in between of repurposing, because repurposing is often equal parts or some sort of part of creation and distribution. And so when you think about how you distribute content, I think you're really thinking about how to repurpose it. I feel like gone are the days when we thought it would be effective to just post a link on Twitter that's like, are your headlines falling flat? Check out our pro tips. There might still be, a time and place for that, but I'm skeptical, because I think like, is that how you engage with content? I don't know, right? And this is an example that I want to use. Sorry to make this about me, but I think it's really relevant because it's very timely, and I have some hard metrics to point to. So a while back, March 2nd, I posted, SEO strategy does not equal content marketing strategy. A lot of people engaged with that, and that was fun. And then I followed that up almost 2 weeks later with a blog post on my personal site that was, going beyond SEO. So this thing on, on the left here, this blog post that I wrote was just, saying that these aren't the same thing. SEO strategy is not always our content marketing strategy. It should be part of it, ideally, but they can be different. And then I responded to my original tweet with a link to this that was like, oh, I expounded more on this topic. It only got 17 likes. And then just the other day, I repurposed that entire blog post into a Twitter thread and just posted it fresh. I didn't even post a link to the blog post. I just kind of wanted to see how this would do as a standalone repurposed piece of content. And this got a lot more engagement. It's got 78 likes. So I think when you're really thinking about the medium in which you're posting and trying to create content for that medium, you're going to be more successful. So yeah, so repurposing kind of is the distribution. And I also just want to hit on this last point. When you're repurposing content, you're not being redundant. You're meeting people where they are. So, I think if anybody saw my SEO strategy as not content marketing tweet and then later saw my Twitter thread, I don't think they're thinking, gosh, she always talks about this. Because one, I don't think anyone's thinking about me. But two, it's really just you hammering home your point, like you standing for something, having the point of view, and then finding new ways to say it. Last idea I want to mention, I didn't mention early on, this is like such a random example now, but another very tactical example of repurposing is if you have a podcast and a blog, repurposing your blog articles into mini audio episodes. So really just reading your blog article and posting that as a mini episode on your podcast. I've seen some really good success with this. And I've even gotten some feedback from people just pinging me separately to say thank you for it. And it's really just, we'll do 1,000, 1,500 word articles on the Growth Machine blog. And then a few weeks later, I'll record an audio version of it and post it on the Growth Machine Marketing Podcast. And there it becomes like 8, 9, 10-minute episode. And when people have reached out to me about it, they've said, hey, thanks for this. Like, I don't read your blog, but I think these insights are really valuable. And now I can listen to this while I do my laundry. And then it makes it just kind of easier for people to digest, and it makes it more accessible. And then lastly, not helpful probably to just see a slide of links. I can share this with you after, but just some like additional reading that I think is a nice complement to what I just presented on. We have a couple of blog posts on the Growth Machine blog that are, focused on creating pain point, sort of conversion focused content. And then also using your company blog for PR and news, because I think there's a way to do that where you're repurposing the content and sort of repurposing press releases and repurposing your blog for the purposes of PR, but doing it in a way that is beneficial for your users, beneficial for your company. And yeah, that's kind of, and then, I'm on Twitter, my DMs are open. That's kind of that.
Yay. Thank you, Amanda. So many brilliant nuggets in there to take away. And that's such a good idea with your blog posts and reading them out onto podcast episodes. I hadn't thought to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
So clever. So we've got a few questions that have come through that I'll just jump in with. So this is from Araminta, who submitted it before. She's asking, so there's, if you are either a one-person team or a freelancer and you're having to do like all the new content and the repurposing, how do you go about that?
It's really hard. I mean, and I'm a team of one, and I'm a team of one, and I have some help. So, it is just hard. But I would say for one thing to consider is narrowing your scope as much as you can, as much as you reasonably can, because if you're trying to dominate Twitter and LinkedIn and your email list and like a Facebook ad strategy, you are one person, you cannot do all that. So I would say focus on as few channels as you can, and maybe it's like 2 or 3, and then work really, really hard on those channels. So like for us, for Growth Machine specifically, we have better conversion through our Twitter page and my Twitter account than any other social media channel. So I don't spend much time on LinkedIn anymore. We definitely don't spend time on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, but we don't really use it. I'll just post there periodically if I have time. So there's that. And then also, if you're ever in a position to be able to hire freelance writers, at least as a one-off, they can really help you with repurposing. And the way that we do that at Growth Machine is, every week we have our podcast, a new podcast episode comes out, and it's usually it's an interview with someone like Christina, a thought leader in the overall marketing space. And we try to focus on like kind of organic marketing, less on the paid stuff. And then I work with a really terrific freelance writer who will listen to the episode. And then together we'll pick out one of the themes discussed and then turn that into a blog post. So the resulting blog post isn't, here's what you missed on this episode. It's more of, Christina Pachalas joined us on the podcast. We talked about community engagement. Here's how you can boost engagement in your community. That way it's a focused topic. Anybody might be searching for that term anyway. And so regardless of whether you listen to the podcast episode, you can still benefit from the blog article. So maybe to kind of wrap that up, the last piece of advice I would have is, as you repurpose the content, think about how you can repurpose it in such a way that that resulting piece can stand on its own. So it can be its own thing. And that person reading that doesn't need the context of having read the previous format.
Well, that's so smart. So just really zooming in on a particular point from a podcast in and of its own, and that in itself could then drive people back to the whole podcast. So that's very
exactly.
And you have a freelancer to do that piece.
Yeah. And she'll do a couple of articles each month. So it's not super expensive, but I do, make sure to focus on, having a great writer, because I also think like there's a fine line there, right? Like if you're not able to pay a good writer really well, then you might as well not pay a writer at all. But yeah.
Does that answer your question, Araminta? Do feel free to jump on.
Oh yeah, I'm here. Hi. Yes, it does. Thanks. So I'm scaling slowly, and I'm also looking for writers to help me. But I'm also very involved in the process. So I'm a writer myself, but I'm also a content strategist and content marketer. So I'm kind of scaling, and I'm trying to figure out how repurposing and scaling works together. I've realized that it's all about SOPs, right? The SOPs in place, and making sure that the people that you hire are good at following guidelines and good at taking feedback. That's the next.
Totally agree.
Learned that the hard way. So right. And this is, as a writer myself, this is what I always try to be, right? Good at taking feedback and good at following guidelines. It goes both ways. So yeah. Thanks for replying.
Yeah, thank you.
I think I can go. Can I?
Go for it.
Can you see me?
I can see you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to. We've kind of got like the opposite problem at Cognizant. I'd say we're like relentlessly producing like new stuff, because there's like probably a reasonable sized team for. I guess there's about 250 people in the business ish, and then we've got probably like six, seven, eight like content people. I can't remember how many, but it's around that ballpark. So I guess like culturally, how do you shift from like just relentlessly being focused on like producing new stuff to like being smarter with stuff that you already have? Because I think that's what we have an issue with now, like where we put something out, like it goes out and then we just don't do anything with it like ever again, basically. Like, is there like a framework that you can use to just ensure that like it, or like a routine that you can follow that just gets you into the swing of repurposing things a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I like to block out time for each kind of channel or each task, maybe I would say. And so like some days or some moments, I'll block out an hour of just repurposing blog posts into Twitter threads or tweets. And then just kind of, I don't always schedule them out. I feel weird about that. That's just me personally. Like it makes me anxious just to do that, because I worry that like the tweet will go out at an awkward news time and it's going to be super weird for everyone. That's just me. I don't have any data to support. So yeah, there's that, like blocking out the time to create that repurposed content and then scheduling it, whether it's using a tool or just like putting it on your calendar to tweet it out again or whatever that is. I also would think about the kind of the shelf life of some of the content. So like maybe as you're publishing new blog articles, I might look in Google Analytics to see like, one, if there are any older posts that are getting better SEO love. Like maybe you'll see that a blog article you created like 6 months ago or 8 months ago is now picking up steam in search rankings. I might use that as an example of something to, one, either refresh if it needs to be refreshed, or two, using that in social media, or using that as a jumping point to create a new blog post and then link back to that, just to kind of keep it going in terms of supporting the content that's already there, that's already getting found, that people had been thinking about, but maybe hadn't looked at in a long time, stuff like that.
Cool. Thank you very much.
And out of interest, Amanda, how many new pieces of content do you tend to put out there a month? And if there's like a content manager that's putting a head of content marketing, putting pressure to keep making new content, like how would you make a case to say, hang on, let's maybe dial that back a bit and put more time into repurposing?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on each business, right? How many channels you have. Because generally speaking, I would say that it's good to, update your blog with new content like twice a week, especially if you're going after certain keywords and you have an overall SEO strategy in place. At least twice a week is good. But that means you're having 8 brand new pieces per month. So then I would think about like, well, if you have 8 new pieces a month, you should have like at least 8 separate, social media posts that come from those things. And then I would also think about maybe the longer form content, if there's an opportunity for that you can create maybe once a month or once a quarter. And I think this probably applies better to the B2B space because it kind of applies to the overall white paper and guidebook strategy of like having that gated asset or having that thing for lead gen. And I think it's also just, as you're creating a dozen new 1,000-word blog articles in a given quarter, ideally it's done under a cohesive theme, right? So hopefully it's not too much of a lift to be able to derive a white paper from at least some of that content.
Yeah, thanks. I've got one from Veronica from before, who's asked, if you could only do 3 things to promote a content piece, what would you do?
Well, the answer is it depends, but I think it's your top 3 channels, whatever those are. But I do want to answer more specifically. I'm going to say it should be your email list or your email newsletter, the blog itself, and one social channel. I think that's usually what works best for people. I say email first because, hopefully you have an email list, you have subscribers, however large or small. And for me, that's always just the best performing channel, the most important channel, because it's your owned audience. You have their email address. They are people who subscribe to you because they care about what you have to say. And so I take that very seriously. And I like to create content for those people that really supports them. So on the growth machine email list, if you subscribe, our email list, I say our newsletter is for content marketing and business leaders, people who want content to help power the rest of their business. So it could be a business owner, it could be a content marketer, could be a marketing generalist, but I write for those people. And so in the newsletter, I really try to focus on delivering unique, novel insights, which may or may not come from the blog. Again, as a team of one, I don't always have time to write blog posts, but and a blog post for us at Growth Machine is like, really, really thoughtful, long, like 1,000-word piece. I don't always have time for that, but I might have time to get into some level of detail on something really specific, like maybe like increasing conversion on your email open rate. I could write something about that, maybe not 1,000 words, but I can write like 300 words that I think could help somebody. So that's what goes into our newsletter. So if I think about repurposing, I'll think about like taking one small nugget from a blog article or from some other piece, maybe it's even from here. Maybe I'll think of something in this talk that I'm like, ooh, this should go in the email list because people would like this. But yeah, that's kind of a long-winded answer, but yeah, email list first.
Yeah, that's a good place to start. Luke's got a question here.
Cool.
Where are you, Luke?
Hi there.
Hey.
Hi, Luke.
Can you hear me? Hi there. Great talk, by the way. Thank you very much. First things first. And yeah, just a question. So a consistent question I have, well, a fight, I should say, I've had with marketing managers, CMOs over the years is always the debate over what should and what should not be gated content. Because the first question I always get is, can we use this to get leads? Can I put this up? Can I get people's email addresses from this? And I've had to have conversations back and forth many times where things like case studies, for example, saying, can we put a gate up on the case studies? And I would often argue that a case study, probably not, because that's basically a brochure for whatever activity the company happens to do.
Mhm.
Whereas something with original search in it or numbers, maybe that could be, but then I've had to have that back and forth many times. And I just wondered if you'd come across a similar thing, if you had any particular thoughts on what should and what should not be gated.
Yeah, I totally agree. I very much agree with you. And I think it's crazy to gate a case study because that is the thing that is actively promoting your service or your product. Like, why would you gate that? You know, at Fitbit, the rule of thumb that we had, that it was just the rule, was if we want to gate something, it needs to be longer than 2 pages. Period. Like, it was just like, if it's shorter than 2 pages, it is not worth someone putting in their information and then downloading it. So the answer that, or the answer that I would have, or the thing I would push back on the case study front, is I think the individual case studies should be open, gated. They should be searchable, easy to find on your website. But maybe you could do like a case study booklet where it's really just a PDF of all the case studies put together, or like grouped by theme, where it's like 3 case studies bundled into one and it's all, focused on the same pain point. Because then at least it's something that's like I, as a potential lead, I might fill something out to get like a 10-page PDF. Like, I think that's fair. So I would say that. And then I would also just add, like, if you're not gating, if the content you're gating isn't very high quality or isn't at least very long, then you might over time devalue your brand, or it trains your audience to not download your stuff if they're not getting great stuff if they're not getting great value. And then personally, I like to lead with value. I like to believe that if you are creating value for someone and offering it to them for free, then they'll trust you and they'll keep coming back to you. Final suggestion, I would suggest if you could turn any of that into email courses, that's always really nice. Like at Growth Machine, we have a free SEO course. It's totally free. But, obviously you have to give your email to join it. And then we drip it out over the course of a week. But it's like, I don't know, like 10,000 words of like really thorough, a thorough tutorial on like setting up your site, choosing a domain, all that stuff. Was that helpful?
Definitely helpful. Yeah, thank you. Similar thoughts. It's just nice to hear that from someone else as well. So
yeah. Or you could just, or tell them, at Fitbit, I know that at their B2B team, they didn't gate anything if it wasn't shorter than, if it was shorter than 2 pages, they didn't gate it.
That is almost exactly what I'm going to say. So yeah.
Yeah, get another company that did this. Thank you.
Yeah, always good to have that social. Got a question from Sana. Her Wi-Fi is being shaky, but do you also repurpose content in different formats? We've been exploring with GIFs and videos lately, but they just take a while to make sometimes, especially when our design team is busy.
Yes, definitely. I think using different formats is super important, especially when you're launching into new channels. So we launched our YouTube channel earlier this year, and we don't have a ton of videos. I think we have like 6 or 8, but they're all derived from existing blog posts that we have. And it was helpful to do this because, one, it just increases the accessibility of the existing content that you have. So it makes it easier to digest stuff you're already saying. And even if it's like 90% the same, I don't think it seems the same to your viewers. Like, there are people, like we did one YouTube video on one of our case studies, and I think, like, just based on some of the feedback that I got from people, they didn't feel like it was repeat content. They were just like, great, love the video, don't care about the case study, right? Where it's the same, it's really the same thing, but it's different format. So I do think it's super important to use other formats. It might also help make the business case to your leadership, right? Like, if you are trying to launch into a new channel, or maybe if they want to launch to a new channel, you can always say that, like, we need to repurpose the existing stuff because it helps us start at a more sustainable clip. Okay, hey, I don't have time to write 10 brand new scripts from scratch. I do have time to write 10 scripts based on this existing content that we have. So it also just speaks to the overall quality of your content. Like, if you're able to repurpose your existing content into other stuff, it means you're onto something, right? And if you feel like you have something, and anything worth saying is worth saying in multiple ways.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, how even though it might seem like you're repeating yourself as the creator, to others it just seems like a fresh piece of content. of itself. Sana said super useful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Does anyone have any final questions before we wrap up? No? Okay. But thank you so much, Amanda. That was brilliant. So many takeaway points that I think people can start implementing.
Oh, great. Thank you for having me. And thank you everyone for listening and for being so great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
You too. Thanks.